What happens when the universe delivers perfect karma to someone who destroyed your most important day? This is the story of how my sister's cruelty came back to haunt her in the most poetic way possible. If you enjoy stories about family drama and unexpected justice, consider subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. I'm curious, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Drop a comment and let me know. The pearl earrings felt like ice against my neck as I stood at that altar, watching 200 guests shift uncomfortably in their pews. My mother's earrings, the ones she'd worn on her own wedding day, the ones that were supposed to bring me luck. June 15th, 2019, 2:30 in the afternoon. St. Mary's Catholic Church in suburban Connecticut. All done up in white roses and baby's breath, sunlight streaming through stained glass windows like some kind of divine spotlight on my humiliation. The organist had stopped playing 20 minutes ago. Father Mackenzie kept checking his watch, his face a mask of professional sympathy that made my stomach churn. He's probably just stuck in traffic, Mom whispered from the front pew, but her voice cracked on the word probably. Dad sat stone-faced beside her, his jaw working like he was chewing glass. I touched the pearls at my ears, feeling their smooth warmth against my fingertips. Just breathe, Becca. Just breathe. But David wasn't coming. Deep down, in that place where women always know the truth, even when we're lying to ourselves, I already knew. The best man had disappeared an hour ago to make some calls. The groomsmen stood behind me like pallbearers at my dignity's funeral. Then came the whispers. They started in the back pews and rippled forward like a tide of humiliation. Phone screens lit up as guests pretended to check the time while actually texting their friends about the drama unfolding before their eyes. Oh, that poor girl. I heard his ex-wife called him this morning. The cake alone must have cost $3,000. Each whisper was a needle through my chest. I wanted to run, to gather up my silk train and sprint down that aisle and out those heavy wooden doors. But the earrings seemed to anchor me there, their weight a reminder of family tradition, of expectations, of the woman I was supposed to become in this moment. Instead, I stood frozen, my bouquet of white peonies wilting in my sweating palms, while 200 people watched Rebecca Morrison become the cautionary tale they'd whisper about at future weddings. Remember that poor Morrison girl? Left right there at the altar. Can you imagine? The church bells that should have rung in celebration remained silent, and in that silence, something inside me cracked. Not broke, not yet, but cracked, like fine porcelain developing a hairline fracture that would eventually split clean through. I reached up and unfastened the pearl earrings with trembling fingers, dropping them into my mother's outstretched palm. Some traditions, I realized, weren't worth carrying on. The smell of pine and Mom's Chanel no. 5 should have meant Christmas magic. Instead, it meant facing my family for the first time since my wedding disaster became the neighborhood's favorite gossip. December 2019, 6 months after David left me standing at that altar like some pathetic rom-com reject. I'd spent those months in therapy, slowly rebuilding the pieces of myself that scattered across St. Mary's marble floor. Dr. Martinez kept saying I was making remarkable progress. I was starting to believe her, until I walked into Mom and Dad's dining room and saw Amanda's smile. My younger sister had always been beautiful in that effortless way that made other women hate her. Tonight, she practically glowed, her blonde hair caught up in some complicated twist that probably took an hour but looked like she'd just woken up perfect. She wore a red silk dress that hugged every curve, and when she saw me, her green eyes lit up with something that made my skin crawl. Becca! She jumped up from her chair, champagne flute in hand. Oh my God, you look so much better. I was just telling everyone how worried we've been about you. The dining room fell silent except for the soft jazz playing from Dad's old stereo. Mom had gone all out. Her grandmother's china, the good silver, red poinsettias down the center of the table. Aunt Carol and Uncle Jim sat frozen with their forks halfway to their mouths. My cousin Sarah looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. I'm fine, Mandy. I forced a smile, settling into my usual chair across from her. Really? Oh, I know you are. Amanda's voice was honey-sweet, but there was something underneath it, something sharp. It's just, well, you know what they say about getting back on the horse. Dad cleared his throat. Amanda, maybe we should… No, it's fine. Amanda waved him off, taking a generous sip of champagne. I mean, David did you a favor, really. Better to find out he was a coward before you wasted your whole life on him, right? The word coward hit like a slap. I gripped my water glass so tight I thought it might shatter. Amanda! Mom's voice carried a warning, but my sister was just getting started. She stood up, raising her champagne flute like she was making a toast. I actually have something that might cheer Becca up. A little Christmas joke I've been working on. Working on. That phrase would echo in my head for years. So there's this woman, Amanda began, her voice carrying that theatrical quality she'd had since high school drama club. And she's standing at the altar, right? All dressed up in white, flowers everywhere, the whole 9 yards. And she's waiting, and waiting, and waiting. She emphasized each waiting with a dramatic pause, her eyes locked on mine. The room was dead silent except for the clink of ice settling in Uncle Jim's Scotch glass. But here's the thing. She's not actually waiting for her groom. She's waiting for her reality check to arrive. Amanda threw her head back and laughed, a bright tinkling sound that made me want to vomit. Get it? Because sometimes the universe does us favors we don't even know we need. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my heart beating in my ears, could smell the pine tree in the corner suddenly too strong, too cloying. Mom's face had gone white. Dad was staring at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. That's enough. The voice was mine, but I barely recognized it. Low and controlled and dangerous. Oh, come on, Becca. Can't you take a joke? Amanda plopped back down in her chair, still giggling. I'm just trying to help you see the bright side. The bright side. I repeated the words slowly, tasting their bitter flavor. The bright side of being humiliated in front of 200 people. Well, at least you found out what kind of person he really was. That's when Sarah spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. Mandy practiced that joke. The room went so quiet I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. What? I looked at my cousin, seeing something like shame in her expression. The joke. She called me last week and she practiced it. The whole thing. The timing, the punchline, everything. Sarah's words came out in a rush like she'd been holding them in too long. She wanted to make sure it was funny. The blood drained from Amanda's face. Sarah, that's not... You practiced it? I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the hardwood floor. You planned this? It was just supposed to be funny. Amanda's voice had lost its confident edge. Everyone's been walking on eggshells around you for months. I thought if we could all just laugh about it. Laugh about the worst day of my life? Mom finally found her voice. Girls, please, it's Christmas. But I was already backing toward the doorway, my hands shaking. In my mind, I could see those pearl earrings sitting in Mom's jewelry box upstairs, waiting for the next Morrison woman to wear them down an aisle. Would that be Amanda? Would she get everything I'd been denied? You know what, Mandy? I grabbed my purse from the hall table. I hope someday you understand exactly how this feels. I hope the universe delivers you that same reality check, gift-wrapped with a big red bow. I left them there in their perfect dining room with their perfect Christmas dinner, my sister's laughter still echoing behind me like broken glass. As I sat in my car in the driveway, watching the warm glow from their windows, I had no idea that karma was already sharpening her knives. 4 years passed like a slow healing scar. I'd rebuilt my life piece by careful piece. New apartment, new job at the marketing firm, even a few casual dates that didn't end in disaster. I'd learned to smile when people mentioned weddings, to nod politely when they shared their engagement news. I thought I'd finally found my footing. Then Amanda called in March 2024. Becca, oh my God, you'll never guess. Her voice bubbled through my phone speaker as I stirred pasta sauce in my galley kitchen, the familiar sound of her excitement making my stomach clench. I'm engaged! I set down my wooden spoon, staring at the red sauce like it might hold answers. Congratulations, Mandy. That's wonderful. His name is Rick Fletcher. He's absolutely perfect, successful, handsome, everything I've ever wanted. And get this, he proposed at the Riverside Country Club. You know, where the Pemberton wedding was last year. Oh, you probably didn't hear about that one. Of course she'd get the country club, the same venue where I'd dreamed of having my reception, back when I still believed in fairy tales. When's the wedding? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. September 7th. I know it's rushed, but Rick says when you know, you know. And Becca. Her voice shifted, taking on that honey-sweet tone that always meant trouble. I want you to be my maid of honor. The pasta sauce started to bubble, little red volcanoes erupting on the surface. Mandy, I don't think... Please. I know things have been weird between us since that Christmas thing, but you're my sister. My only sister. It would mean everything to me. That Christmas thing. As if publicly humiliating me was just some minor family squabble. I need to think about it, I said. Of course. Take all the time you need. Oh, and there's one more thing. Her voice dropped to that conspiratorial whisper she'd used as a kid when she was about to ask for something she knew she shouldn't. I was hoping I could wear Mom's pearl earrings. You know, something borrowed? They'd look perfect with my dress. The words hit me like ice water. Those earrings, the ones I'd worn on the worst day of my life, the ones I'd torn off in shame and pressed into Mom's palm, the ones that represented everything I'd failed to become. The pearl earrings, I repeated slowly. I mean, it's not like you're using them, right? And they'd be so perfect for my something borrowed. Plus, it would be like having a piece of family tradition, you know? Not like you're using them. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. I'll talk to Mom about it. You're the best. Oh, I have to go. Rick's taking me ring shopping. We're upgrading to something bigger. She laughed. That tinkling sound that still made me want to crawl out of my own skin. I love you, sis. The line went dead, leaving me standing in my kitchen with sauce burning on the stove and rage building in my chest like storm pressure. I called Mom immediately. Oh, honey, she said after I'd explained Amanda's request. You know how she is? She gets these ideas in her head. She wants the earrings I wore to my failed wedding, Mom. The ones that were supposed to bring me luck. A long pause. I could picture her in Dad's old recliner, probably twisting her wedding ring the way she did when she was trying to choose her words carefully. Maybe it would be good for the earrings to have a happy ending, Mom finally said. Maybe they need a chance to fulfill their purpose. Their purpose. As if objects could have destiny, as if my humiliation was just a detour on the earrings' journey to Amanda's perfect day. What if I'm not ready to be her maid of honor? What if I can't handle watching her get everything I wanted? Honey, that was 5 years ago. David wasn't right for you. We all see that now. But Rick seems different. Stable. And Amanda's really happy. Everyone was so convinced that Amanda had found her fairy tale. Even Mom had fallen under the spell of Rick Fletcher's charm. I'd met him exactly once at Easter dinner, where he'd spent the entire meal talking about his real estate ventures and making jokes that weren't quite funny enough to laugh at. There was something about the way his eyes never quite met yours when he spoke. Something about how his phone buzzed constantly and he'd glance at it with this secretive little smile. Something about how Amanda seemed to shrink a little in his presence, as if she was trying very hard to be the woman she thought he wanted. But who was I to judge? The sister who got abandoned at the altar? The cautionary tale who lived alone with takeout containers and true crime podcasts? By August, I'd agreed to be Amanda's maid of honor. Stick around. You won't believe what happens next. The bridal shower was at the country club, of course it was. 50 women in pastel dresses, sipping mimosas and cooing over Amanda's registry choices. I stood in the corner wearing a navy blue dress that made me feel invisible, watching my sister open gift after expensive gift. Oh, this crystal is gorgeous. Amanda held up a vase that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Rick has such refined taste. He helped me pick out the pattern. Rick helped pick the crystal pattern. What kind of man involved himself in stemware decisions? And where is the groom today? Asked Mrs. Pemberton, the country club's unofficial social director. Business meeting, Amanda said quickly. But I caught the flicker of annoyance across her face. You know how dedicated he is. I was refilling my mimosa when Amanda's college roommate, Sophie, appeared beside me at the beverage station. Becca, right? Amanda's told me so much about you. Sophie glanced around, then lowered her voice. Can I ask you something? What do you think of Rick? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? It's just, I knew Rick in college, before Amanda, and he had this pattern. Sophie bit her lip, clearly debating whether to continue. He'd get engaged to these amazing women, plan these elaborate weddings, and then disappear right before the ceremony. There was this girl, Jessica, then Sarah, then Sophie. Amanda's voice cut through the chatter like a blade. She appeared beside us, her smile bright but her eyes dangerous. What are you two talking about over here? Just catching up, Sophie said smoothly, but I could see her hands trembling slightly around her champagne flute. Well, come on. I'm about to open the gift from Rick's mother. I think it might be the family diamonds she promised me. As Amanda dragged Sophie away, her words echoed in my head. He had this pattern. Disappear right before the ceremony. I thought about Rick's wandering eyes, his secretive phone calls, the way he'd shown up 20 minutes late to Easter dinner with some vague excuse about traffic. I thought about Amanda's brittle smile whenever anyone asked about wedding details, how she'd started biting her nails again, a nervous habit from childhood. And I thought about those pearl earrings sitting in Mom's jewelry box, waiting to adorn another Morrison bride walking toward what might be another disaster. The universe, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor. The photos fell out of Amanda's purse like confessions spilling onto marble. September 6th, the night before her wedding, and I was in her bridal suite at the Riverside Country Club helping her organize last-minute details when her overstuffed Kate Spade bag tipped over. Oh God, everything's everywhere! Amanda dove for her scattered belongings: lip gloss, breath mints, bobby pins, and a manila envelope that split open on impact. Black and white photographs scattered across the Persian rug. At first glance, they looked innocent. A man leaving a restaurant, getting into a car, walking up apartment steps. Then I saw the timestamp, August 15th, 2024, 3 weeks ago. And the man was Rick. Mandy, what are these? I picked up one of the photos, my stomach dropping as I recognized the woman Rick was embracing outside what looked like a downtown apartment building. She was petite, brunette, and wearing a wedding ring that caught the streetlight. Amanda's face went white. She snatched the photo from my hands, her perfectly manicured fingers trembling. They're nothing. Just, it's complicated. Complicated? Amanda, this looks like surveillance photos. Who took these? She sat heavily on the bed, still clutching the photograph. For a moment, she looked like the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, terrified and small. I hired someone, a private investigator. You what? His ex-wife kept calling, and there were all these mysterious meetings, these business trips that didn't make sense. Her voice cracked. I just needed to know for sure. I knelt beside her, gathering the scattered photos. There were dozens of them. Rick meeting with the same woman over and over, coffee shops, restaurants, her apartment. In one particularly damning shot, they were kissing in what appeared to be a hotel lobby. Mandy, he's having an affair. You know that, right? You can't marry him tomorrow. It's not what it looks like. But even as she said it, her voice held no conviction. Maybe it's work-related or... Work-related? I held up a photo of Rick and the woman in what was clearly an intimate embrace. Amanda, look at these. Really look at them. She looked, and I watched something crumble behind her eyes. The bride-to-be facade she'd been maintaining for months finally began to crack. I can't call off the wedding now, everyone's here. The deposits, the flowers, the catering. She gestured helplessly around the opulent suite with its champagne service and white roses. What would people say? What would people say if you marry a man who's cheating on you? Amanda was quiet for a long moment, staring at the photos spread between us like evidence at a crime scene. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Remember what you said at Christmas? About hoping I'd understand how it feels? The words hit me like a physical blow. My curse, coming home to roost. Amanda, I didn't mean... Maybe this is karma. She laughed, but it came out broken and sharp. Maybe this is what I deserve for what I did to you. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that no one deserved this kind of betrayal. But part of me, the part that still ached from that Christmas dinner humiliation, stayed silent. The earrings, Amanda said suddenly. Mom's pearl earrings. I can't wear them tomorrow. Not to this, whatever this is going to be. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, I said carefully. Maybe Rick will explain. Maybe there's a reason. Don't. She held up her hand, stopping me. Just don't. We both know what these photos mean. But even knowing, even with the evidence scattered around us like broken glass, Amanda didn't pick up her phone to call Rick. She didn't march down to his room to confront him. Instead, she carefully gathered the photographs and slipped them back into the envelope. I need you to help me get ready tomorrow, she said, her voice steadying with a determination that scared me. Whatever happens, I need to look perfect. Can you do that for me? I stared at my sister, beautiful, proud, stubborn Amanda, and saw myself 5 years ago, standing at an altar, waiting for a man who would never come, choosing dignity over truth until the truth chose for her. Of course, I whispered. That night, I lay awake in my hotel room thinking about karma, about justice, about the weight of wishes that come true in the worst possible ways. Down the hall, Amanda was probably staring at the ceiling too, knowing that tomorrow would either be the beginning of her happily ever after or the most public humiliation of her life. At 2:47 a.m., my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Wedding still on for tomorrow? R. I stared at that message for 20 minutes before deleting it. Some secrets were too heavy to carry alone, but this one wasn't mine to tell. Tomorrow, Amanda would learn what I'd learned 5 years ago, that sometimes the universe has its own timeline for delivering truth. In the morning, I would help my sister put on those pearl earrings, the same ones I'd worn to my own disaster. And whatever happened after that would be between Amanda, Rick, and the brutal honesty of daylight. The question that kept me awake wasn't whether Rick would show up. It was whether I hoped he would. September 7th dawned crisp and clear, the kind of perfect autumn day that wedding planners dream about. I knocked on Amanda's sweet door at 8 a.m., carrying coffee and the weight of last night's revelations. She answered in her silk robe, makeup half done, looking like she'd aged 5 years overnight. "The photographer wants to start with getting ready shots in an hour," she said without preamble. "And Mom's already called twice asking about the flowers. How are you feeling?" Amanda turned away, walking to the vanity where Mom's pearl earrings sat in their velvet box like tiny, perfect accusations. Like I'm about to make the biggest mistake of my life. Or avoid it. I can't decide which. I set down the coffee and studied my sister's reflection in the mirror. Without her usual confident mask, she looked vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen since we were children. You could still call it off, you know. People would understand. Would they? She picked up the earrings, letting them catch the morning light streaming through the tall windows. Would you understand? After what I did to you? The question hung between us like incense. I thought about that Christmas dinner, about her practiced cruelty, about the years of competition and comparison that had shaped us both into women who measured their worth against each other's failures. "Amanda, why did you really make that joke at Christmas?" Her hands stilled on the earrings. For a moment, I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, so quietly, I almost missed it. "Because I was jealous." "Jealous? Of me getting abandoned?" "No." She met my eyes in the mirror. "Jealous that you tried, that you put yourself out there, that you were brave enough to believe in something beautiful even if it didn't work out. I'd never been that vulnerable with anyone. Never let anyone close enough to destroy me like David destroyed you." The confession hit me like cold water. All these years I'd thought she saw my failed wedding as weakness, as something to mock, but she'd seen it as courage I possessed that she lacked. "So you decided to try it yourself? With Rick?" "I thought if I could do it better, be smarter about it." She laughed bitterly. "Turns out I'm not smarter, just more foolish." Her phone lit up on the dresser. Rick's name flashed across the screen, but Amanda made no move to answer it. "Aren't you going to take that? He's called 6 times this morning. Keeps saying he needs to talk to me before the ceremony." She shrugged, but I could see the fear in her shoulders. "I figure whatever he has to say, he can say it at the altar." The phone stopped buzzing, then immediately started again. This time, Amanda grabbed it and switched it off entirely. "Help me put these on?" She held out the pearl earrings, her hands shaking slightly. I moved behind her, lifting her hair as she tilted her head. The pearls were warm from the sunlight, smooth against my fingertips as I fastened the delicate clasps. In the mirror, we looked like we were performing some ancient ritual, the passing of family hopes from one generation to the next. "There," I said softly. "You look beautiful." And she did. Even pale and frightened, Amanda was radiant in a way that made my chest ache. The earrings caught the light just as they had in all the old photos of our mother, our grandmother, stretching back through generations of Morrison women who'd worn them on their wedding days. "Becca," Amanda's voice was small, "if something happens today, if it goes wrong, will you forgive me? For Christmas? For everything?" I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw not the cruel, perfect woman who'd mocked my pain, but the frightened girl who'd always lived in the shadow of her own impossible standards. "There's nothing to forgive," I said, and meant it. A knock at the door interrupted us. "Ladies, it's time for family photos," came the photographer's cheerful voice. Amanda stood, smoothing her robe, and for a moment she looked like the confident bride she'd been pretending to be for months. But I caught the quick glance she threw at her silenced phone, the way her fingers touched the pearl earrings like a talisman. "Whatever happens," I said as we headed for the door, "you're not alone in this." She squeezed my hand, her grip tight enough to leave marks. "Promise me something? If Rick doesn't show up, don't let me stand there as long as you did. Don't let them whisper about me for 5 years." The request was like a knife to the chest, not because she was asking, but because she trusted me enough to ask. The sister who'd humiliated me was now placing her dignity in my hands. "I promise," I whispered. But as we walked down the hall toward the photo session, toward the family gathering, toward the ceremony that would either crown Amanda's fairy tale or shatter it completely, I couldn't shake the feeling that promises made in desperation have a way of demanding more than we're prepared to give. Through the tall windows, I could hear the bells of St. Mary's. Different church. Same sound that had haunted my nightmares for 5 years. Today, they might ring for Amanda's happiness, or they might stay silent while another Morrison woman learned the brutal weight of hope. The morning light streaming through those windows felt like a spotlight, and I realized that in a few hours, we'd all know whether karma was merciful or merciless. Whether the universe was done with the Morrison sisters or just getting started. 4 o'clock. The Riverside Country Club's chapel gleamed with late afternoon sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, 200 guests seated in expectant silence. White roses cascaded down the aisle runner, their perfume mixing with the nervous energy that always preceded a ceremony. I stood at the altar in my Navy maid of honor dress, watching Amanda's bridesmaids arrange themselves in perfect formation. Behind me, the groomsmen shifted uncomfortably. Rick still hadn't appeared for their pre-ceremony meeting. Where is he? Amanda's whisper reached me from the bridal suite doorway, where she waited in her ivory silk gown, Mom's pearl earrings catching the light like tiny stars. Her bouquet trembled in her white-knuckled grip. I'm sure he's just running late. I lied, though my stomach had been churning since Rick's best man, Jake, pulled me aside 20 minutes ago. He's not answering his phone, Jake had said, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. His room is empty. All his stuff is gone. All his stuff is gone. The words had hit like ice water, but I'd smiled and told Jake to keep looking. What else could I do? Tell Amanda her worst fears were coming true? Watch her crumble in front of 200 people who'd already started whispering? The country club's wedding coordinator, Mrs. Hartwell, appeared beside me with the forced smile of someone paid to handle disasters. We're going to delay the processional by 15 minutes, she murmured. Traffic issues. Traffic issues. The lie felt thin as tissue paper. I glanced at the guests, recognizing the signs of growing unrest. Phones emerged from purses and jacket pockets. The same social media vultures who'd circulated videos of my own wedding disaster were here, ready to document Amanda's humiliation in real time. Mrs. Pemberton leaned across the aisle to whisper something to Aunt Carol, who immediately paled and looked toward the bridal suite. The ripple of whispers started in the back rows and moved forward like a wave. Oh God, they know! Amanda appeared at my elbow, having slipped from the bridal suite. Her face was alabaster white, making the pearl earrings seem to glow against her skin. They all know, don't they? Before I could answer, Mom hurried over from the front pew, Dad close behind with the expression of a man watching his family's reputation disintegrate. Sweetheart, maybe we should, Mom began. Maybe we should what? Amanda's voice cracked like breaking glass. Cancel? Send everyone home? Pretend this isn't happening? The photographer, oblivious to the drama, kept snapping pictures. Flash after flash capturing Amanda's breakdown, the family's panic, the guests' hungry stares. Each click would become evidence of our family's second public humiliation, digital breadcrumbs scattered across social media by morning. Amanda. I grabbed her arm, feeling the silk of her dress, soft and expensive and suddenly tragic. Come with me. I pulled her into the country club's powder room, away from the cameras and whispers. She collapsed onto the velvet bench, burying her face in her hands, careful not to disturb her makeup. I can't do this, she sobbed. I can't stand up there and wait like you did. I can't be the joke everyone tells at dinner parties for the next 5 years. Looking at my sister, beautiful, broken Amanda, I felt something shift inside me. The satisfaction I'd expected, the vindication I'd secretly craved, never came. Instead, I saw myself 5 years ago, terrified, humiliated, abandoned. I saw the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, the teenager who'd cried when she didn't make varsity cheerleading, the woman who'd built her entire identity around being perfect and was now watching it crumble. You don't have to, I said quietly. What? You don't have to stand up there. You don't have to wait. I knelt in front of her, taking her cold hands in mine. We can walk out right now, together. Let me be the one who saves you this time. Amanda stared at me, mascara smudging beneath her eyes despite the waterproof promises. After what I did to you? After Christmas? After everything? Because of what you did to me. Because I know exactly how this feels, and I won't let you go through it alone. For a moment, we were just sisters again. Not competitors, not the success in the cautionary tale, not the golden child and the damaged goods. Just two women who'd loved unwisely and learned the cost. The earrings, Amanda whispered, touching the pearls with trembling fingers. They didn't bring me luck either. Maybe that's not what they're for, I said, helping her to her feet. Maybe they're for something else entirely. Mrs. Hartwell appeared in the doorway, her professional composure finally cracking. Ladies, I'm afraid... Well, we've received word that Mr. Fletcher won't be attending today's ceremony. Amanda laughed, a wild, broken sound that made my chest ache. Won't be attending? You mean he ran away? Just say it. Rick Fletcher ran away rather than marry me. The words echoed off the powder room's marble walls like an epitaph for all our carefully constructed dreams. "What do you want to do?" I asked Amanda. She straightened, and for a moment I glimpsed the steel beneath her beauty, the strength she'd inherited from generations of Morrison women who'd survived worse than this. "I want to go home," she said simply. "But first, I want to thank our guests for coming. I want to face them with dignity, not run away like a coward." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." She squeezed my hands. "Will you stand with me?" I nodded, and together we walked back toward the chapel, toward 200 people with their phones and their pity and their barely concealed excitement at witnessing another Morrison sister's downfall. But this time, she wouldn't face it alone. Amanda walked back into that chapel like a queen approaching her coronation, not her execution. I stayed beside her, feeling the weight of 200 stares as we moved down the aisle together, not as bride and maid of honor, but as sisters. The silence was deafening. No whispers now, just the heavy quiet of people witnessing something they couldn't quite name. Amanda stopped at the altar where she should have been taking vows, and turned to face the crowd. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I know you came to witness a wedding, and I'm sorry to disappoint you. Rick won't be joining us." A collective intake of breath rippled through the chapel. Phones appeared, but Amanda didn't flinch. 5 years ago, my sister stood in a different church facing a different crowd, experiencing what I'm experiencing now, and Her voice caught, but she pressed on. "I mocked her for it. I turned her pain into a joke because I thought it could never happen to me." I felt tears threatening, but Amanda's courage held me steady. I was wrong about a lot of things. Wrong about what makes someone strong. Wrong about what love looks like. Wrong about what these earrings really mean. She touched the pearls at her ears, Mom's earrings that had witnessed generations of Morrison women's triumphs and failures. They're not lucky charms. They're reminders that we survive, that Morrison women have always survived. The chapel was so quiet you could hear the September breeze rustling the trees outside. Even the photographer had stopped shooting, his camera lowered in something approaching respect. Becca taught me something today. She taught me that true strength isn't avoiding humiliation. It's choosing grace when humiliation finds you anyway. Amanda turned to me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. She taught me that sisters show up for each other, even when we don't deserve it. I reached for her hand, squeezing tight. The pearl earrings caught the afternoon light streaming through the chapel windows, and I finally understood what they really represented. Not luck, not tradition, not even beauty. They represented the unbreakable bond between women who refuse to let each other fall alone. "I want you all to enjoy the reception," Amanda continued, her voice gaining strength with every word. "The food is paid for, the band is here, and someone should get some joy out of this day. Consider it a celebration of family, of forgiveness, of the fact that sometimes the universe knows better than we do." She paused, looking out over the sea of faces, some sympathetic, some disappointed by the lack of drama, some genuinely moved by her grace under fire. And if anyone ever tells this story, I hope they remember that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is discovering who's still standing beside you when everything falls apart. With that, she turned and walked back down the aisle, her head high, her hand in mine. Someone in the back started clapping. I think it was Aunt Carol, and the sound spread through the chapel like ripples on water. We made it to the country club's lobby before Amanda finally broke down, but this time her tears were different. Not the desperate sobs of the powder room, but the cleansing cry of someone who'd faced her worst fear and lived to tell about it. "I can't believe I did that," she gasped between tears. "I can," I said, helping her out of her wedding shoes. "You were magnificent." Mom and Dad found us there in the lobby, and for the first time in years, our family felt like a unit instead of warring factions. Dad wrapped Amanda in his arms while Mom fussed with tissues, and I felt something settle in my chest that had been restless for 5 years. "The earrings," Amanda said later, as we sat in Mom and Dad's living room, still in our formal wear but barefoot and exhausted. She'd taken them off and was holding them in her palm, studying them like she'd never seen them before. "I want you to have them back." "Amanda, no." "Yes." She pressed them into my hands. They belonged to the brave Morrison sister, the one who showed me what real strength looks like. I looked down at the pearls, feeling their familiar weight, their smooth warmth. They looked different somehow, not like symbols of my failure, but like badges of honor earned through survival. "We'll share them," I said finally, "when one of us needs to remember how strong Morrison women really are." Amanda smiled, the first genuine, uncomplicated smile I'd seen from her in years. "Deal." Outside, the September sun was setting, painting Mom's kitchen in golden light that made everything seem possible again. Somewhere across town, Rick Fletcher was probably explaining himself to his ex-wife, weaving new lies to cover old ones. Somewhere, other women were standing at other altars, hoping for fairy tales that might or might not come true. But in that kitchen, with my sister's hand in mine and Mom's pearls between us, I understood something Dr. Martinez had been trying to teach me for years. Sometimes the greatest gift life can give you isn't getting what you want. Sometimes it's getting exactly what you need. The chance to choose love over resentment, grace over grudges, forgiveness over revenge. The Morrison sisters had both been abandoned at altars, but we'd found each other in the aftermath. And that, I realized, was the better love story all along. What would you have done in my situation? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.